My neighbor showed up at my doorstep and demanded, "Let me use your Wi-Fi. Why should I pay when you have unlimited internet?" When I refused, he scoffed, "Then I'll just connect to it anyway." I smirked, pulled up my router settings and said, "Funny, because I just blocked every device you own." Let me tell you how I ended up in a war with a man who lives 15 feet from my kitchen window. 3 years ago, I moved into a 2-bedroom ranch house in Garland, Texas. I'd just finalized a bitter divorce and needed a clean slate. Nothing fancy. The place was a bit older, had some creaky floors, but it was mine. A little yard for my dog, Scout. A spot to park my truck. It was peace, and after what I'd been through, I needed that. I met Barry about a week after I moved in. He lived next door, big guy, early 40s, walked like his knees hurt. Always sweating, always wearing that crusty cowboy's shirt that looked like it hadn't seen a washing machine in a month. He came over with a 6-pack of some cheap beer I didn't recognize. Called it a welcome gift, but I think he just wanted someone to drink with. I was polite. Took the beer. Chatted for a few minutes. But something about him felt off. He talked a lot, asked weird questions. Stuff like how much I paid for the house, whether I worked from home, if I had a security system. Nosy. Way too nosy. Over the next few weeks, Barry started showing up more often. He'd knock on my door during dinner. He'd wave me down when I was taking out the trash. Once I caught him letting his dog crap on my lawn without cleaning it up. Another time he helped himself to my garden hose and just started washing his truck like it was his driveway. Still, I tried to be decent. I was the new guy. Didn't want drama. Then one Friday afternoon, Barry showed up again. It was hot as hell outside. I had just finished mowing the lawn and was pouring myself a glass of iced tea when I heard pounding on my front door. I opened it. There he was. Sweaty, red-faced, breathing hard like he'd jogged over, which I doubt, because he's built like a recliner. "Hey," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "Let me get your Wi-Fi password." I laughed. Thought he was joking. "You're serious?" I asked. "Yeah, my internet got cut off. And you got unlimited, right? What's the problem?" I stared at him. "The problem is, that's not how this works. I pay for my internet. You want your own connection, call Spectrum." He gave this ugly little chuckle. "Man, don't be like that. It's not costing you anything. It costs me privacy, speed, security. So no." That's when he said it. Straight face. No hesitation. "Then I'll just connect to it anyway." And he turned to leave like it was no big deal. Something about that made my skin crawl. He really thought he could just take it. No shame, no respect. Just take. I shut the door, walked over to my desk, and pulled up my router settings. I'd seen a couple strange devices connected before. One was a beat-up Galaxy phone, another was a smart TV I didn't recognize. I'd ignored them at the time. But now I went through every device, one by one, and blocked them all. The names made it easy. Barry's Android, Barry Roku, even B's laptop. A few minutes later, I stepped back outside. Barry was standing in his yard, poking at his phone with a pissed-off look on his face. "Something wrong?" I called out. He looked up. "My phone's not connecting." "Yeah," I said. "Funny thing. I just blocked every device you own." The look on his face was priceless. Like I'd slapped him across the mouth. "You serious right now?" "Dead serious." He just stood there, stunned. Then he muttered something under his breath and stomped back into his house. That should have been the end of it. A line drawn. Boundaries set. But Barry wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The next morning, I found something strange. I was taking Scout out back when I noticed the garden hose was missing. Not rolled up wrong. Gone. The whole thing. I checked around the side of the house, looked behind the shed. Nothing. Then I glanced over the fence and saw it, coiled up on Barry's back porch like it belonged to him. I stood there, jaw tight. I didn't even care that much about the damn hose. It was the fact that he stole it right off my property. like some brat throwing a tantrum. I walked around to the front, rang his doorbell. No answer. But I knew he was in there. I could hear his TV blasting through the wall. I knocked harder. After a long pause, the door creaked open a few inches. Barry stood there in his usual stained shirt, holding a mug like he was the king of the block. "You got my hose," I said flatly. He smirked. "Oh, that thing? Thought it was mine. It was just laying there. You know damn well it's not yours. I want it back. Now." He stared at me for a second, then shrugged. "Maybe later. Busy right now." He shut the door in my face. That was when I realized what I was dealing with. This wasn't just about Wi-Fi or a garden hose. Barry was pushing, testing me, seeing what he could get away with. So I decided to push back. That night, I installed 2 security cameras, one facing the front yard, one in the back. I posted a sign on my fence, "Smile. You're on camera." Petty? Maybe. But I was done playing nice. A couple days later, my trash cans were knocked over. Bags split open. Looked like someone had taken a bat to them. But here's the kicker, nothing else on the street was touched. Just mine. Scouts started barking like crazy at night. Usually around 1 or 2 a.m. Every time I checked, Barry's porch light would flick off the second I opened my door. I started documenting everything. Dates. Times. Pictures. I even printed out screenshots of the router logs showing his blocked devices, in case I ever needed proof. Then came the worst part. One Saturday morning, I was working on my truck out front when I heard yelling. A woman's voice, angry, loud, scared. I looked up and saw Barry screaming at a girl in his driveway. Young, maybe late teens. His daughter, maybe? I'd never seen her before. He was in her face, fists clenched. She looked like she wanted to vanish into the ground. I don't know what they were fighting about, but it was ugly. I didn't want to get involved, but I couldn't look away either. Then he slapped her. Hard. Right across the cheek. She flinched, stumbled back, then ran down the sidewalk crying. I stood there, frozen. Heart pounding. Barry looked up, saw me staring, and gave me this dead-eyed glare like he was daring me to say something. I didn't say anything, not then. But I started planning, because now it wasn't just about a stolen hose, or Wi-Fi, or even the trash. Now it was about showing him what happens when you think you're untouchable. After I saw Barry hit that girl, something inside me shifted. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept seeing her face, scared, red from where he hit her and wet with tears. I didn't know who she was, but I knew I couldn't pretend like it didn't happen. The next morning, I called the non-emergency police line, gave them Barry's name, address, and told them what I saw. I didn't expect much, just wanted it on record. They said they'd send someone out to do a welfare check. I watched from my front window as the squad car pulled up. 2 officers knocked on Barry's door. He opened it, shirtless, looking like he'd just rolled out of bed. They talked for a few minutes. He was calm, smiling even, nodding. Then they left. Just like that. That's when I knew Barry had done this before. Knew how to act. Knew how to lie. Probably told them she was a niece or some girlfriend's kid, and that everything was fine. And since I wasn't family and she wasn't there wasn't much the cops could do. But Barry knew it was me who called. Later that day, he stood at the edge of my driveway holding my garden hose. He stared at my front door for a full minute, then dropped the hose right in the middle of the yard. Didn't say a word. Just walked away. It was supposed to scare me. Let me know he was watching. It just made me more certain. I started digging. I found out Barry used to work at an auto body shop out in Mesquite. Got fired about a year ago for threatening a coworker. No charges filed. I also found an old court record. Back in 2013, he got arrested for disorderly conduct and resisting arrest during a domestic call. No conviction, though. Charges dropped. This guy was used to dancing on the edge. He'd do just enough to make people nervous, but not enough to get locked up. I needed leverage. Real leverage. Then I remembered something he let slip once during one of his drunken ramblings early on, back when I was still being neighborly. He'd bragged about renting out his garage to a buddy for cash, some guy who worked nights and needed a place to crash during the day. He'd said it was off the books so he didn't have to report the income. I checked the zoning laws for our neighborhood. Residential only. No subletting. No short-term rentals. I called the city anonymously, told them a neighbor was illegally renting part of his property to someone living in the garage. They said they'd look into it. A week later, an inspector showed up with a clipboard. I watched from my side yard as Barry tried to explain himself. His buddy wasn't home, but the inspector took photos, asked questions, and left. 2 days after that, Barry got a notice taped to his front door. Code violation. Fines pending. Orders to cease rental activity or face escalating penalties. He exploded. Came banging on my door, red in the face. "I know it was you," he yelled. "You think you're smart, huh?" I opened the door just enough to talk. Scout stood behind me, growling low. "You made this mess yourself," I said. His jaw worked like he wanted to say more, but he just spat on my steps and stormed off. Things got quiet for a few weeks after that. I thought maybe he'd finally backed off. But then, one night, I heard glass shatter. It was 3 a.m. I rushed outside in my slippers. My truck's rear windshield was smashed in. Glass everywhere. Scout barking like crazy. And in the distance, I saw Barry's porch light flick off. I called the cops. They came, took photos, asked questions. I gave them everything, video from my security cams. Unfortunately, the angle on the driveway was blocked by my tree, previous reports, the code violations, even the router logs. But without footage or fingerprints, they couldn't charge him. I felt helpless. Cornered. Until I got a text the next morning from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi. I'm the girl from Barry's place. You saw what he did. Can we talk?" And that changed everything. I stared at that text for a long time. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew this was my chance to end it the right way. So I replied. "We met that same day at a coffee shop a few blocks away." She said her name was Melanie. She was Barry's daughter from his first marriage. Just turned 18. Her mom had kicked her out, and Barry let her move in a few months ago. At first, he was okay. Then the drinking started. Then the yelling. Then the hitting. She said he kept her off the lease so no one could prove she lived there. She didn't go to school anymore. Worked nights at a diner in Plano, slept during the day in the garage. The same garage he wasn't supposed to be renting out. I asked if she'd go to the police. She said she tried once, when she was 16. They took her right back to him. But now she was legal. Now she had a choice. We made a plan. First, she agreed to file a full report, photos, dates, everything. The cops couldn't ignore it now. I drove her to the station myself, waited while she filled out every last detail. They opened an investigation right then and there. Next, I helped her find a room. A lady I knew from work had a spare in her place, rented it out to students and single women. Nothing fancy, but safe. Melanie moved out the next day while Barry was at the store. And then, the final step. She gave me one thing that changed everything. Barry's phone. She said he passed out drunk every other night and never put a lock on it. Inside? Pictures. Conversations. Voice memos. Stuff he never meant anyone to hear. There was a video, him bragging to somebody about smashing up my truck just to send a message. Another where he laughed about getting cash from a guy renting the garage off the books. One where he called Melanie a freeloading little bitch who owes me rent and bruises. I copied it all. Sent it to the police. Sent it to code enforcement. Sent it to his old job. And just for good measure, I sent it to his HOA board, too. It didn't take long. He was arrested within the week for assault, property damage, and violating housing codes. Melanie pressed charges. The city hit him with over $5,000 in fines. The HOA threatened to sue for damages to neighborhood property values. Even his old shop posted a public statement online saying they had cut ties with him years ago after hearing what he'd done. Barry didn't go down quiet. I saw him once more, being shoved into a cruiser, screaming at everyone on the street. You think this is over? I'll come back. You hear me? This ain't over. But it was. Melanie's doing all right now. She's back in school. Working. Saving up. Still texts me sometimes to say thanks. I don't think she ever really got one before. As for me, I learned something important. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. And if they threaten to cross the line, make damn sure they never get the chance again. I started out wanting peace. He wanted war, so I gave him one. And I made damn sure he lost.